Jesus is from the highest God. Somebody told me that God never changes. Apparently, however, human understanding of God has and does. We've been taught anything that God does is good. However, from the Old Testament, we get a horrific picture. This is where the God of the Old Testament decides to wipe out nearly all life on earth. Now, just because he doesn't think the members of one particular species are obeying him sufficiently. I suppose that we have to say and think that it was a good thing somehow. And that if God turned somebody into a pillar of salt for a minor infraction, well, once again, I suppose we have to say that it's a good and just thing, since of course God did it. That was Yahweh. And if he constantly commands his children to absolutely slaughter the other groups of his children, including infants, well, that can't possibly be considered evil, as long as God is the one who commanded it, now can it? And if that whole bit about torturing people for all eternity for the sins of being born in the first place, well, what about that? Is that good? You can't just call that evil either, because, well, God did it. But if anybody else did it, it would be the evilest act ever imagined. But if Yahweh has made the rules, and therefore, by definition, everything he does is good, really makes you feel all warm and fuzzy inside, doesn't it? The New Testament God is nothing like the Old Testament God. Jesus is never mentioned in the Old Testament by name. However, it does seem that many assume that the prophecies were speaking of Jesus. I heard one idea where the Romans supposedly wrote the New Testament and created Jesus as the Messiah who would fulfill the Old Testament prophecies. This was to settle down the Jewish zealots. The last book of the Old Testament to be written was the book of Daniel, which was finished roughly 150 years before Jesus. The Old Testament writers didn't mention Jesus, since Jesus had not yet existed. You could, of course, say that the prophets prophesied about him ahead of his time. But where's the evidence? Scholars have found no such evidence in the Old Testament. There are passages that clearly refer to the Messiah, but the requirements set for those passages are not fulfilled by Jesus. The Jews say Jesus hardly fulfilled any of their prophecy, so it cannot refer to him. Today we know Jesus doesn't need propping up by a faith in the Old Testament God Yahweh. Jesus came to reveal the true spiritual Father. But now, let us move on to the idea of Jesus being invented by the Romans. Technically, the Romans could have created Jesus and the New Testament as part of some big conspiracy. It is possible. In history, lots of things are possible. It's even possible that Jesus was in fact the Son of God who performed miracles and who will one day return to earth in order to create a new paradise, his Father's kingdom. But if Christianity was a Roman device to control the masses, why would the Romans persecute the very religion they supposedly invented for their own purpose? If the Romans invented Jesus, wouldn't they have made him fulfill the expectations of the Messiah? After all, that's what they were looking for. Instead, what we see is the early scribes trying to shoehorn Jesus into the position of Messiah. And this hypothesis that the Romans invented Jesus in the New Testament simply doesn't make any sense, since the Messiah part was added as well. Jesus was trying to explain to the lost sheep of Israel how to live a life of goodness. Don't give in to temptation. Serve others. The more you help other people, the more God will help you. This is known as karma. What goes around comes around. Jesus lived his life by helping other people so he could be an example for us to all follow. And as several have loosely stated, the golden rule.
Do it your pirate voice. You harm none.
And if you harm none, do as you will. Hey.
That's actually a Wiccan thing, but
Yeah,
it's doing to
I know,
others. It's the same. It's the
Stuff
golden
I've read,
rule.
yeah. Now, one last question. How is it possible, in the normal, spontaneous course of life to find out from people how they'd like to be treated before you actually treat them, including complete strangers, and in every given situation. But I still know I want to be treated right and fair. Jesus teaches us to do the same to others, because people might not remember what you said or what your name is. They'll sure remember how you made them feel. Jesus can't be the son of that God Yahweh. Even the very existence of Yahweh has never even been proven. Jesus called someone else the only one true God. He said his Father is our Father, and his God is our God. Like the way he thinks. Luke said Jesus is the Son of the Most High. The Most High is the Father of Jesus. The Most High God is a higher God than ever portrayed in the Old Testament. God is a spirit, and those who worship him must worship him in spirit and in truth. Jesus said no man has seen God at any time. Now, to finish this with a left-turn thought, in ancient paintings, both the angel Gabriel and the Holy Spirit are portrayed as females. The story was understood by early Christians that a lady came and talked to Mary and said to Mary, God the Father wants you to be the mother of Emmanuel. Thanks for watching.